Welcome to the Marc Little Show, presented by Cure America Action. Here's your host, Marc Little.
Welcome to the Marc Little Show, presented by Cure America Action. I'm a pastor, lawyer, and political commentator, and I am your host. Now let's get down to business. Joe Biden, famously known for the 1994 crime bill, previously took a pretty harsh stance against crack cocaine. The cheap drug, disproportionately used by Black Americans, but also disproportionately the cause of death for Blacks. Here's Joe Biden on the floor of the United States Senate in 1991, touting his work with Senator Strom Thurmond. Yes, a man who opposed civil rights for Black Americans. Here's the clip.
But let's look at the facts. Since 1986, Congress has passed over 230 new or expanded penalties for drug and criminal offenses in this United States. 230 new penalties. And these penalties range from an automatic 5 years in jail for any person caught with a rock of crack cocaine, a piece of crack cocaine as small as a quarter. I don't have a quarter with me, but if you visualize what one looks like, yeah, I do have a quarter. If you have a piece of crack cocaine no bigger than this quarter that I'm holding in my hand, 1/4 of $1. We passed a law through the leadership of Senator Thurmond and myself and others, a law that says if you're caught with that, you go to jail for 5 years.
Joe Biden, a staunch opponent of crack cocaine, so much so that he will lock up users for 5 years for 5 grams. Notwithstanding at the time, powder cocaine users, usually affluent, got 5 years for 500 grams. But that's a discussion for another day. Now, after being lifted from the trash heap by the congressman from South Carolina, our good friend Representative Jim Clyburn, who vaulted Joe Biden into the White House under very suspicious voting conditions, Joe Biden is once again after the lives of Black Americans with crack. But this time, he's playing Santa Claus. Crack cocaine is no longer a bad thing in Joe Biden's world. No, no, no. In fact, he wants to use our taxpayer funds to facilitate smoking crack in order to bring about that amorphous phrase that we now hear, racial equity. Here's the plan, as reported in the Washington Free Beacon on February 7th, before being walked back, of course, by Ms. Psaki, the administration. It reported, and I quote, "The Biden administration is set to fund the distribution of," wait for it, "crack pipes to drug addicts as part of its plan to advance racial equity," end quote. The $30 million grant program, which closed applications Monday, just so you know, and will begin in May, will provide funds to nonprofits and local governments to help make drug use safer for addicts. Included in the grant, which is overseen by the Department of Health and Human Services, are funds for smoking kits and supplies. A spokesman for the agency told the Washington Free Beacon that these kits will provide pipes for users to smoke crack cocaine, crystal methamphetamine, and any illicit substance. Well, in my opinion, next, there'll be suppliers. Yeah, just wait on that. This all comes on the heels of the president defending his $450,000 payments to illegal aliens who were detained during the Trump administration after illegally crossing the border. I tell you, friends, what kind of world are we living in? This episode, crack pipe for blacks and Joe Biden's America. That's our topic for today. You're listening to the Marc Little Show, where we discuss faith, politics, and the law. I am Marc Little, a pastor, lawyer, and political commentator. I'll be right back with our special guest.
The Marc Little Show is brought to you by Cure America Action Incorporated. Cure America Action is a 501c4 nonprofit organization that advocates for conservative principles based on Christianity, capitalism, and the Constitution. The organization engages in social warfare activity and promotes policies and legislation in distressed zip codes throughout America. To learn more about Cure America Action, you can visit us at cure-action.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Marc Little Show, presented by Cure America Action.
All right. Welcome back to the Marc Little Show. This is Marc Little. I'm your host. I'm a pastor, I'm a lawyer, and I'm a political commentator. With us today is someone who I can tell you is responsible for me sitting behind this microphone today. He's a dear friend. I've got his bio. I think I'll read it, but I think what's most important to share with you is that he is a dear, dear friend of many years. It's because of him that I even became interested in hosting a program, a podcast, because he is a industry veteran. He is my friend, Lonnie Poindexter. Lonnie, let me just read a little bit of this bio so that I can tell them really who you are outside of my heart expression of you. Lonnie Poindexter is the founder and host of the national Christian political radio show called Lion Chasers. The show broadcasted on the Urban Family Communications Network, which was a ministry outreach of American Family Radio, one of the largest Christian radio networks in the nation. Lonnie was also a co-host on GLC TV's Light of the Southwest show, a national television program on God's Learning Channel in Odessa, Midland, Texas. Lonnie's work in Christian media has afforded him the honor and privilege to travel and speak nationally and internationally in places like Jamaica, Israel, and South Korea. Lonnie's passion is the sanctity of life and fighting for the unborn. He collaborates with the nation's foremost pro-life organizations in America. Lonnie is the founder and president of the Lion Chasers Network, an association of faith-based organizations and activist clergy, mobilized to speak on issues of the day that negatively impact our nation. The Lion Chasers Network addresses the intersection of faith and public policy in America. Lonnie's position is there is no line of demarcation between morality and governance. That's my friend. The Lion Chasers Network champions uncommon men and women of faith who are not afraid to speak truth to power in matters of faith and public policy. The mission to return our nation to a moral and free society. Lonnie, your bio is darn near as long as mine, my friend. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, my brother. And I tried to curtail it back a little bit, but I'm pretty wordy.
Well, indeed. As I was reading, I was saying to myself, my goodness, well, how much more is left? I love it, Lonnie. You deserve it. You've done a great work, brother. I'm teasing you. I think it's important that we share with people the depth and breadth of what the Lord has allowed you to do in your career and life. And I'll never forget our first interview when I released my book, The Prodigal Republican, in 2012. You were the first interview that I had ever done for the book. And I later learned it was your first interview. and it turned out to be my best. I haven't had a better interview since then. You are my friend, my brother in Christ, and I love you. And thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. You know, it was something that we didn't know at the time, but the Lord was doing something and uniting us together. And I think back on it often and kind of chuckle to myself that, man, who knew what God had planned? And the only thing I could see is, and you remember this conversation when I told you, I said, man, I got a feeling you're going to be spending a lot more time in Washington, D.C.
Well, that's when I realized that you're a prophet, because it wasn't long before that actually became the case. And we spent a lot of great time together in our nation's capital. I want to get right to the program, Lonnie, and shoot you out our first question of the day. You heard how Joe Biden is handing out crack pipes to blacks, and then of course Jen Psaki began to walk that back, probably when they realized the polling on it wasn't so great for them. You're from Southern California. You were around in the days of the series The Dark Alliance that the Mercury News did, chronicling the government's role or alleged role in the crack epidemic that really began here in Southern California and spread all around the world, empowering the Crips and the Bloods gangs here. And, you know, it's always been thought that there was some connection with the government and the spread of crack cocaine in our communities, which killed us as Black men and women disproportionately. As I said, you're from Southern California. You saw the drug use and sale effectively bring these gangs to national prominence. Some say that the government had a role to play, as I indicated. It's hard to sort out fact over fiction. What we do know is that the Black community was a beneficiary of the rise in crack cocaine, but mostly we were patients, Lonnie, or we were the owners of body bags. It put a lot of us in the grave. And now here we're looking at a president who once opposed it, wanted to lock us up, but now somehow he's had a change of heart and he thinks it's a good idea to bring about racial equity by helping us smoke crack. What's your take on the history, first, Lonnie, of crack cocaine in the inner cities and the government's controversial alleged role in it?
Well, you know, Mark, I was around during that time. There was part of my formative years as a young adult and a teenager, and I saw it was almost if a light switch was flicked on, you know, like a switch, and just clicked, and all of a sudden the community began to change. And you saw it reflective in the gang activity that took place in the community. You saw it reflective in the fact that these drugs, which were at one point very difficult to get, about the best that you could find in the inner city at that time was marijuana. Then all of a sudden, you see, you know, originally called angel dust, they used to call it, and then you had cocaine and its new derivative, which was crack cocaine, and it just swept through the city like a flood. And it was, I want to use the term amazing, but that sounds like a positive term, but you saw it. And there was always a scuttlebutt that there must be something else going on. Why is it so available now where it wasn't before? And so, you know, I was a skeptic at first, but, you know, you begin to look at something, you see enough smoke, there's probably a little bit of fire there as well. You know, one thing I wanted to mention as I was reflecting back on what our interview would be talking about today, and, you know, I thought about, this took me back to remembering in the former Soviet Union when the Politburo and the movers and shakers, the decision makers within the Communist Party, to appease and anesthetize the populace, which was under the thumb and the boot of oppression from that heinous regime, made vodka readily available to everyone in the community. I mean, you couldn't get bread; you had to stand in line for days to get bread, but you get vodka just about immediately. And it reminds me that that's, I think, what's taking place with this stance that our president is taking concerning this, and for him to get offended when he gets challenged on it. And I guess I was reading that they backed off on the crack pipe thing, providing pipes. But I lived in Los Angeles. I remember Santa Monica downtown LA, but specifically Santa Monica. And Mike Hayden, the ex-husband of Jane Fonda, was the mayor of Santa Monica, and how they took that same stance. And then Santa Monica was overrun by homeless people and drug addicts to the point where it looked a lot like what we see in Los Angeles today. And I would say here in Northern California, even in Sacramento, where you see homeless camps everywhere. And they didn't back off of that until the people in the community screamed enough, and the wealthy in the community screamed enough, because there was issues of crime and all types of other foolishness taking place. I'm offended. I'm appalled. I think this is proof positive that our president, he's a racist and a bigot. Because if you think that this type of policy is beneficial for the nation in general, and then specifically for communities that are under plight, as the Black community has been for, with our tenure in this nation, how can you justify putting forth this type of policy?
Well, you're absolutely right, and you might have seen the news recently, because it also dovetails into the homelessness that we have,
Yes.
and the disproportionate presence that we as Black folks have in the homeless population. And I was watching the news, and a homeless person was being interviewed, and he said, "Well, heck, they pay me to be homeless. I get, I think he said close to $600, just being where he is, which is nowhere. We're not only paying people to be homeless, we're paying people to stay at home and not work. I just don't understand. This for me is Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 20, where we're calling what was good, we're calling it bad, and what was bad, we're calling it good. We're taking what was bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. It is inside out, upside down. It makes absolutely no sense at all that they would be providing smoking stations, crack pipes, and supplies to people. And the statistics, or rather the data, also shows that for people who are multi-substance users, there's really no treatment. So we're just going to make them worse. To your point, there is an international history of keeping the population, I guess, anesthetized and simply going along with government mandates and programs. I mean, we see it now. You've got people who have just fallen in line with government edicts. And that just turns us into a compliant population where the government gets to do whatever the heck it wants to do. And we have seen how government has experimented on their population throughout history. And the United States is not exempt from that kind of behavior. We saw it in Tuskegee. We've seen it in the jail population and what they did with experimenting, saying that it was Agent Orange and it was a cancer deal. But they were experimenting disproportionately on Black people. Now we have a president who is outwardly giving materials that lead to the death of people of color. Lonnie, here's the question. I don't understand. Where is the Congressional Black Caucus? Where are all these loudmouths who are so quick to talk about somebody being racist? And you got somebody who is in the White House passing out paraphernalia that, by the way, when they stop you and they stop you for possession, one of the things that they include in those charges is that you had paraphernalia. That adds to the criminal charge against you for possession, that you had paraphernalia. So now they're handing out paraphernalia. He goes from locking people up to now patting them on the back and keeping them high. What do you say about it?
I say, you mentioned the Congressional Black Caucus, and what came to mind was something that Booker T. Washington said over 100 years ago, that there are a group of people who earn a living stirring up the grievances of people, our people. And that's how they earn a living. They have no desire to solve any of the issues that are relative to our community, but they sure can't stir the pot that, and create the divide. And he said this over 100 years ago. We have the same thing taking place today. with Messrs. Jackson and Sharpton and Dyson and all in the new breed that's coming up now that's speaking this Joy Reid and the rest of them speaking this the Congressional Black Caucus. I spent a number of years living in D.C. and you know what they were known for, Mark? What they were known for is every year they had their big CBC boondoggle, and they were known for having the best parties in D.C. For the millions of dollars that come in under their auspices, and they spend it, and they have the great rap artists. It's just a good time for entertainment. But literally nothing is done in any of the districts that those representatives for the people, the districts they occupy. And we're talking about Baltimore, you can say Atlanta, anywhere you've got a Congressional Black Caucus member and the locale that they represent, those communities are in dire straits.
And we know that Nancy Pelosi is the queen of California, if not the country. And it really begs a question because they're not blind to it. And so it begs the question. You see what happened in Venezuela, formerly one of the most powerful Latino nations on the planet. Now it is in complete squalor. And we are going the direction of these socialist nations. I get it. I used to scratch my head, and I would say, perhaps they're just too busy getting wealthy, and they don't care, and that is true. But I think the agenda is far worse than that. I think the McCarthy hearings and how we were chasing down communists because we were afraid they were going to ruin our nation. Well, now they're actually running it, and they are hell bent on destroying the nation. And unfortunately, the Republican Party seems to be too dumb to stop it. When we get the reins, we go back to statesmanship. And then we lose power because we don't do anything. And then the Democrats come back in and they continue with their radical agenda to destroy our nation. I hope and pray that these mid-year elections this time around will have a different result, because I'm not sure that we're going to be able to prevent what you described up in the Bay Area of California. I'm not sure we're going to be able to prevent that from rolling all across the nation if Nancy Pelosi and her ilk, Joe Biden, who has just become a completely different person, if they continue to get their way, the United States, we heard this morning, inflation is up 7.5%. It's the most that it's been since Hector was a pup, as my father would say. We haven't seen that kind of inflation in a long, long time. And we're sitting back and we're watching ourselves roll into Venezuela type conditions. And it is quite a frightening thing. Now, Lonnie, early on, I mentioned that we've got a president who's giving $450,000 to illegal aliens while passing out crack pipes to black folks. The juxtaposition of that is just so striking to me. And I think it connects with the idea of what they're trying to do to our nation and to our population. While they fly illegal aliens across the border with COVID in many instances into our nation's cities. And so the question becomes, we know from the Barack Obama Civil Rights Commission that illegal immigration disproportionately impacts Black workers. We know that transporting illegal aliens with COVID into our communities impacts us all. Lonnie, the problem has got to be bigger than what we can see. What's your take on it, and what can we do as, I don't even want to call it conservatives or Republicans or people on the right, as Americans? This is a cancer that is being injected into our veins. What can we do about it, brother?
I'm amazed that people don't understand how bad things are and how bad they can get, as you referenced Venezuela and what's taking place there. Conversely, I look at how can you do something illegal as an illegal alien, I'll say it that way, I'm not going to say immigrant, and then because something happens when you're doing something illegal and you get separated from your child, then the nation that you're smuggling yourself into that causes the separation between you and your child is going to compensate you financially in some fashion. And the number was thrown around 450K and higher. I was reading in some things even higher, up to $1 million, depending on what the circumstance is. How is that even logical?
Up to $1 million per family.
Yes. How is that even logical? Yet this is being touted in our nation's capital and throughout strategic cities throughout the nation. And as we mentioned, California, California tends to be it sets the tone. What happens in California tends to permeate across the nation. That used to be a good thing and why everybody wanted to move here. Now it means something completely different. They're courting a new voting bloc. They're thinking that they do all of this, that number one, though, that new voting bloc will vote overwhelmingly for them because of the freebies that they've been given. And they can bring about, and I'll be so bold as to say this, I think this is all intentional. I think it's to break the back economically of America. And I think this is all tied to the Great Reset, which is probably a topic for a whole nother show. But I believe that that's what's taking place. I think it's inherently evil. It lacks common sense. It's anti-God. It's anti-common sense American. My problem is Americans need to really wake up and understand what's taking place. And I know you're focused with paying your mortgage, taking your kids to school, and all other things you have to do as a typical family in America. This right here will affect your ability to do that. And they are well along the way of pushing this stuff through. And just to back up a little bit and talk about the Republican Party, which used to be the standard to push back on these things. You and I both know they're so infiltrated with rhinos and so forth, but just go along to get along, that they're just really a different side of the same coin in a lot of instances. But we got to have that remnant, if you will, that's willing to stand up and push back and boldly do so. And there are, I think, enough members within the Republican Party that are certainly doing that and trying. But we, as the populace of this nation, need to join with them and support them. They can't do it by themselves.
Well, amen to that. I want to get back to crack pipes for blacks in Joe Biden's America and end with just a little bit of information for those who are listening. I'm with my good friend Lonnie Poindexter from the Lion Chasers Network. He's my guest today. Lonnie, a new study published in the American Journal of Epidemiology found that when combined with other drugs, opioids are proving particularly deadly for Black Americans. Overdose deaths that involve more than one substance increased dramatically between 2007 and 2019, but rose far more quickly among Black Americans than among whites. Among Black Americans, the number of deaths from opioids with cocaine during this time period rose, wait for it, 575%, up from 0.6 to 4.05 deaths per 100,000 people. While among white people, the death rate rose 184%. This is a real problem because what we're talking about today that the administration seems to not know is that they are literally contributing to the death of Black Americans. And so instead of focusing on mortality, of course, we know that they don't really care about life because they support slaughtering it in the womb. But that's a topic for another show. But as it relates to drugs, as it relates to the combination of fentanyl, which is coming across our southern border in weights never before confiscated, it's staggering. One report said there's been enough fentanyl that came across the border in the last year to kill 2 billion people. We got a real problem. So we've got an administration that's not stopping the inflow of drugs across the border, notwithstanding they're not stopping the inflow of weapons that they say that they don't like. They're not stopping the inflow of the sex trafficking of minors, which we should all believe is wrong. But they certainly are not stemming the flow of fentanyl, which gets into powder cocaine. It gets cut up, and ultimately it gets into the crack cocaine. The opioid epidemic is huge as it is being cut and spread and combined with other drugs. Lonnie, as a closing thought, tell us, and I know you are also a man of God, as am I. Tell us, what can we do? How can we pray? What can we say to inspire those who are listening to this show today? Because the circumstances seem dire when the president of your nation thinks that facilitating the use of crack cocaine is a good idea. Give us some wings, Lonnie, that we can leave with our listeners so that we can come off of this very unfortunate topic with some hope. Lonnie Poindexter, give me something.
Well, brother, I'll say this, and I'll be as concise as I can be. The Black community, we're the canaries in the mine shaft. Anyone that knows about how the miners used to work, they would have canaries they would bring with them down in the mine shaft. And if they looked at the canaries and the canaries weren't breathing or no longer alive, they had died in the mine shaft, they knew that there was a poisonous gas that was in the mine shaft. They need to get the heck out of there. What's happening to the Black community is we're the canaries in that mine shaft. And so as we go, so will the nation go. And this is a principle I learned from Dr. Patrick Fagan there in Washington, D.C., who said that so as the Black community goes, so goes America. And he was not African American. He was white Irish Catholic. But he said he had seen the same thing take place in Ireland. And he said, Lonnie, slavery did not destroy the Black community. Jim Crow did not destroy the Black community. He says, but the programs and the agenda most certainly is having an impact on the Black community. So I would say to all Americans, but specifically Black Americans, we need to understand what's really going on, and we need to stand up and push back. And we need to remember our true history, not the history that's being taught today, which is one of victimhood and, oh, look what they done to me, and I can't because they won't let me. But our history that talks about us overcoming in spite of. When we understand what that history is, the history of your father, my father, their fathers, and back to the days when we had two-parent patriarchal households, we can begin to push back. And regardless of what government is doing or what side of government that's in power that's trying to do to us as a people, what is being done today, we can be successful. If we don't, and we look for free stuff, we want to receive the drugs and the free stuff so we don't have to work, get the money, so we don't have to go, all the things we were talking about earlier, then we will succumb. And it can be so bold as to say, so will America. So it's that serious.
That's a good word from my friend, Lonnie Poindexter. Lonnie, you're always carrying words of wisdom. I can't thank you for enough for the time that you have spent with us here today. And I thank you so very much. Come back and be with me again on the Marc Little Show. Thank you, Lonnie.
Anytime, brother. Thank you. Love you much.
That's my friend, Lonnie Poindexter. Thank you so much, Lonnie, for being with us. This is the Marc Little Show. And I just want to say to you, my listeners, that the power lies in your hands. Like the canary in the mine, you are unique. You are image bearer of the Imago Dei of God. You bear the image of God. You're unique. Lonnie said, as you go, as the Black community goes, so goes the nation. And so I want to encourage you to open your eyes. Open your eyes. If somebody is offering you a policy that feeds you poison, it's probably not good for you. A crack pipe to facilitate smoking crack. No matter how good that might sound to the crack user, it's not good for our community. Stand against it. Stand against policies that say, I'm going to give you $425 a month in TANF to feed your family. No, that's dependency. Your family can't live off of $425 a month. Reject politicians that tell you that that's good for you. Your destiny lies in the palm of your very own hands. Your destiny. Your destiny. Please, beloved, take a hold of your destiny. Take a hold of your God-given assignment to benefit yourself, to benefit your family, to benefit your community. Government can't do that work. Reject these elected officials that are pandering to you with policies that break you, policies of dependency, policies that facilitate drug use, policies that give you a handout to keep you bound, all while they're passing out $450,000 to people who break the law. By the way, Black mothers and fathers get taken away from their children every day in America when they commit crimes. You haven't heard of a policy that's giving you $450,000. Wake up. Something is amiss. Something is wrong here. Don't stand for it. Stand against what's breaking our families and our communities. Crack pipes for blacks in Joe Biden's America. Take that with you and chew on it. Does that make any sense to you? This is the Marc Little Show. I'm Marc Little. I'm a pastor, I'm a lawyer, and I'm a political commentator. You can find me on Instagram at @RealMarcTLittle. And you can listen to this podcast everywhere where podcasts are carried, especially Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeart. Thank you so much for listening. Join us again next week on The Marc Little Show.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of The Marc Little Show, presented by Cure America Action. If you'd like to find out how you can bookmark for your next speaking engagement, go to cureaction.com. That's cure-action.com. And then just click on the Bookmark tab. Also, if you want to ensure that our government is working for the people, be sure to sign up for our newsletter to keep up with the latest from our nation's capital. You can sign up for that at cureaction.com. Again, that's cure-action.com. Finally, be sure to follow Marc on his social media pages. On Instagram, search for Real Marc with a C, T Little. And on Facebook and Twitter, just type in Marc with a C, Little in your internet browser. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks again for joining us. Be sure to tune in next week for another edition of The Marc Little Show, presented by Cure America Action.